But the action gets underway with the second race of the day in the Porsche Carrera Cup GB campaign. Commentators Tim Harvey and David Addison.
So a grid is formed, and very shortly the cars are going to be released on the formation lap for the second race. The first one earlier on in the day by Will Martin, a 11th win of his career. One car missing from the grid is going to be that of Henry Dawes, which had enough damage in race one after a first lap tangle to render it out for the day. It wasn't actually Henry's fault. There was a spin ahead of him. He had to go through a complete cloud of tyre smoke and just clipped the spinning car of Will Jenkins, and that did enough damage to Henry's car to put him out of the race and trigger a safety car. This grid is based on the race one result, but with a reversal. Andrew Rackstraw is the man on pole position. He was 5th on corrected times in race one. He picked up a time penalty for, yeah, you guessed it, the dreaded track limit problem. But he's on pole position from James Wallace. The championship, as ever, divided into Pro, Pro-Am and Am, which means we've got 3 battles to look for as the cars now blast away on this formation lap. Perfect weather conditions for them. It's nice and warm outside, nice and sunny, big crowd at Donington, and you can see the pack then weaving its way down towards Redgate Corner, generating temperature into the tyres, with Andrew Rackstraw leading the field, and William Paul returning to the championship, one of the AMs. He's going to be at the other end of the grid. Down through the Craner curves they will come, these 4-litre 911 GT3 Cup cars. Everybody with the same car, even though there are 3 classes. That's based on really the experience of drivers more than technical specification, although there is one tweak for the AM entries, which we'll get to in due course. Andrew Rackstraw then is on pole position. James Wallace with him at the front of the grid. Lining up 3rd, Angus Whiteside, and Sid Smith will start 4th. He steps up from Pro-Am to Pro for this year. Will Martin 5th, then the race one winner. Seb Hopkins starts 6th ahead of Oliver White. He was the Pro-Am winner earlier on in the day. And Josh Stanton lines up his class rival alongside. Ollie Jackson next, George Gamble 10th after a frustrating first race for the reigning champion. Max Coates 11th. He made progress from a 10-second delayed start. Will Jenkins 12th on the grid. He was tagged into a spin in the earlier race. Then it's Carl Cavers who won the AM class. Aaron Mason is next, with then Jonathan Beeston and William Paul to complete the grid. Tim, let's just get this AM element out of the way. What's different to the AM drivers' cars compared to the rest?
The only difference is that they are allowed to use adjustable ABS, so they can adjust the level of ABS from absolutely nothing all the way up to a big intrusion, but it's to help amateurs adjust to these Carrera Cup cars. Otherwise, in specification, they're all the same.
Now, George Gamble, reigning champion, didn't qualify brilliantly, and he had a tough race, struggling to make progress, and then he copped a time penalty as well.
Yeah, I was watching the car in the first race. We haven't shown that live, but I was commenting on the car not taking an even set in the corners, and he was locking up the brakes. To me, it looked like he had a damper problem. Usually that's what it is, based on my experience. And I did go and talk to him and the team, and I believe they have put a new set of dampers on. So let's watch George's progress in this race.
Which is going to be 24 laps or 30 minutes, depending on which is achieved first. The earlier race did go to the full 24, even though we had a safety car, and now the grid is just about formed. There is Carl Cavers, new to the championship with his very colourful car, the video game developer. And that's William Paul, his class rival, or one of his class rivals at the back of the grid. Carl Cavers, OBE, in fact, now for his services to the video game industry. And a class winner, first time out earlier on in the day. Right then, we're ready to go racing. Round 2, Porsche Carrera Cup GB for 2025. Lights out, blast off by James Wallace in the shocking pink car from the outside of the front row. And the Porsche Junior comes up alongside Andrew Rackstraw down towards Redgate for the first time. But Rackstraw on the inside line breaks that fraction later, turns in. Wallace goes second, and he can't get the undercut coming out of the corner, and there's drama in the background. Sid Smith goes around, similar to what we had at the first corner of race one.
Might be Will Martin tagged him as well with damage on the left front. I believe it was.
And there is the damaged car limping downhill. Is that our race one winner, Will Martin? It is! Well spotted, Tim. So Will Martin has got exactly the same damage as Henry Dawes. Broken front left suspension. That car's done.
Yeah, no points for him in this race. And although this race scores less points than race one, you don't want a DNF this early in the year.
That's right, fewer points awarded to those in Pro because that's where the reverse grid comes. So, 3 for the lead on lap 1, and it is up front, Andrew Rackstraw ahead of James Wallace, and then Angus Whiteside. Of the 3, James Wallace, you're riding with him. He's the one that's not had an outright win. He comes up to the outside line into the chicane. No way through there. Right, left, back on the power, up towards the timing line, end of lap number 1, and Wallace gets a really good run again on Rackstraw for the lead.
Yeah, he had a better start as well, but just couldn't find a way round the outside. But very much in these early laps, while they're bringing the tyres up to pressure and temperature, it's Rackstraw on the defensive, isn't it?
It is indeed, as they drop downhill then. Rackstraw was done for track limit offences in race 1. He's got to be careful, especially as he's under pressure. He's really brave through the crane, as you can see him just edge away there from Wallace in second place. Angus Whiteside third, so Wallace now trying to attack for the lead, but actually at the minute he's got to be more concerned with defending second place from Angus Whiteside, and that is Will Martin limping down the pit lane. Massive frustration.
Yeah, big frustration for him, and that's the jeopardy of second of the reverse grid. Angus Whiteside having a look up the inside into Coppice, and he gets cleanly through. James Wallace gave him a lot of room there. He's going to keep his powder dry to fight later in the race.
So he sets off in pursuit, does Angus Whiteside, of the race leader, Andrew Rackstraw. Wallace will sit on the tail of Whiteside, thinking, OK, let's see what you can do about the leader, and maybe he can follow him through. But does Wallace have a problem? Look at the amount of time he loses coming out of the chicane. Not as quick an exit at all. And fourth is Oliver White. Now, that's your leading Pro-Am. Great effort to be fourth overall, helped maybe by the dramas at the first corner, but even so, he steered clear of them, and Oliver White is way up the road from his class opposition. Fifth overall now is George Gamble.
Yeah, but more importantly, Oliver White is very close to the back of the leading 3 pros, so that shows how fast his pace is. Let's look at the start again. James Wallace on the right gets the better start, but Andrew Rackstraw keeps him out nice and wide so that he isn't able to make a cutback on the way in. And Rackstraw leads up. Now let's look. Oh, it looked like Sid Smith got tagged, I think, by Will Martin. Yeah. That's how it looked to me, anyway.
I'd agree with that. Martin's damage was done as they came into shot, so he didn't clip him as he spun. He tagged him into the spin. He gets hit again, but the front left damage was already done.
Yeah, very. It's a real shame. That's ruined both their races, really.
Yeah, double whammy in terms of contact for Will Martin. So no points, and Sid Smith has also retired to the pit lane as well. That's Max Coates in the blue and yellow livery, as now down towards the chicane comes Josh Stanton's purple car ahead of Max Coates, just ahead of him. These two are 6th and 7th, and that, delayed early on, is Seb Hopkins, number 18, fighting back ahead of Carl Cavers in the AM class leading entry, number 22, and that is Sid Smith trudging away. And you can see he's absolutely gutted about that. He felt he had a chance to win that race.
Yeah, definitely. And he did have a chance. Yeah, Seb Hopkins was really delayed in that. He started 6th, but all that shenanigans at the first lap, despite the retirements, meant that he's down in 11th now.
Fastest lap of the race, encouragingly, George Gamble, 5th. So, OK, he's got a bit of work to do to get up with the leaders, admittedly, but that shows better pace than it did in the earlier race. You're looking there at the bright yellow Ollie Jackson-driven car. Of course, another former British Touring Car Championship racer who came back to Carrera Cup last year. He's chasing after Max Coates, who's chasing after Josh Stanton, and they're all chasing after Ollie White, who's got a massive lead in the class. Number 8 turns through, that's Josh Mason, and he's about to lose out to Seb Hopkins, and gets up the inside. Hopkins coming from the Pro class against the Pro-Am, Aaron Mason, who's an experienced driver, one-time touring car racer as well, Aaron Mason. But up the inside goes Seb Hopkins, place gained.
Yeah, nicely done. Yeah, Aaron Mason actually had no testing whatsoever. The deal was only done with Eden Race in the week. He didn't even test on Thursday, so he was straight into the car without any testing. But he knows the cars well. Carl Cavers looking down the inside, and on the inside of him is Beeson.
And that's for the class lead. Jonathan Beeson's blue and white car gets up the inside and is on the attack for the lead of the AM category. Side by side they ran down through the Craner curves. The road should come to Cavers here, but then the next corner favours Beeson on the inside. Is he brave enough? Not quite able to get up the inside, and Carl Cavers just gets across the front to claim the lead.
Oh, he wiped the nose of that car, didn't he, as he turned in confidently, but he did the right thing. He had the road in front of him to get through. This is Max Coates really putting the pressure on Stanton, trying to get the undercut as they come through Coppice, and he has done it, so we'll have the inside for the chicane.
Second in Pro-Am, you're looking at the fight for. Down they come into the chicane. Max Coates brakes as late as he can, but he's got the shorter line into the first part of the chicane. nicely done. Max has dipped into with the occasional guest drive Carrera Cup over the years, but he moves up now full-time after being runner-up in the Sprint Challenge for the Cayman model last year. So Oliver White leads Pro-Am from Max Coates, who's got quite a lot of real estate to make up, but he's on a charge. The man ahead of him, directly ahead of him, is George Gamble, in fact.
Yes, it is, and that's just behind. That's Will Jenkins coming into shot there. He had some damage as well in race one. Oh, this is now very close at the front between Rackstraw and Angus Whiteside. Whiteside, of course, won a race at Brands Hatch last year, which was actually the delayed race from here. Got right, delayed yeah. from because of the rain we had here. Can't believe it now. We're looking at this lovely sunshine. But he won that race fair and square outright at Brands Hatch.
And the following day, he had that launch into a big role, didn't he, coming out of Druids. So Angus Whiteside, very handy driver. Andrew Rackstraw, who's been a Formula Ford champion in South Africa and a race winner in Formula Ford in this country, leads here at Donington, but not by very much. And interesting how they're dropping James Wallace. So he was suggesting he might be keeping dry his powder, but at the moment it is not reflected in the fact that he's over a second back from Whiteside. He's going to have to push really hard late race to make up some of that ground. That's Oliver White going through in the green and blue car leading Pro-Am. That's the reigning champion George Gamble, 5th. And this is 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, all in a queue. Coates, Stanton, Jackson, Jenkins, Hopkins.
Yeah, but Ollie White's doing a great job. Look, he's just behind James Wallace. So the leading Pro-Am hanging on to the back of the Pro in 3rd place.
So Angus Whiteside makes the climb up the hill. Somebody that's worked his way through the Pro-Am to Pro ranks. Andrew Rackstraw then goes out of coppice, still clearing the race lead, but only just 2nd season in the championship, so he knows the circuits better now, he knows the cars better, he knows the teams. Winner of the Killarney 9 Hours before moving into touring cars back home, and then coming into GT racing here in the UK last year. Over the line they come then. Rackstraw to Whiteside was 0.344 of a second, it's now 0.374 of a second, and still over a second back is James Wallace, who is now being caught ever so slightly by Ollie White.
Yeah, I hate to say this, but what this race really needs is a little safety car just to close everyone up after that first corner. It really split the pack up a little bit, didn't it? But fastest lap has gone to Andrew Rackstraw. He set that on lap 4 of 7, which is really when the tyres are pretty much in their sweet spot. But he took that away from George Gamble, who is still lapping on the same pace as the leaders.
Now, the way this battle is shaping up, you might yet get your wish for a safety car, because it's looking a little bit more feisty, to say the least, between Josh Stanton and Ollie Jackson. And then behind, you've got the green and black colours carried by Will Jenkins with the repaired back to the car, and then Seb Hopkins. Now, Hopkins 10th overall is a pro, and he desperately wants to clear all of this Pro-Am traffic, so he is on a mission.
He certainly is. It's really good to have people graduating from the Cayman Sprint Challenge GB into Carrera Cup. That's part of the established pyramid of moving up the Porsche ranks into GT racing. Of course, previous Porsche juniors and scholars, be they Dan Harper, Harry King, have all gone on, Charlie Eastwood, to GT racing, and very good to see the past champions and runners-up from Sprint Challenge moving up to Carrera Cup.
So the race leader is Andrew Rackstraw. He's only half a second ahead of Angus Whiteside, but make the point again, Rackstraw was one of the drivers that picked up track limit penalties in race 1, so he does need to be careful, especially given all the pressure he's under from Whiteside. Bouncing over the curb, that was Jonathan Beeson, and he is charging onto the tail again of Carl Cavers. This, remember, is for the lead of the AM category, and they're not that far behind the Pro-Am car of Aaron Mason, who's going to be doing the Porsche Super Cup this year, the Grand Prix supporting series, although sadly this year no British round, frustratingly. But Mason, as I say, almost in the clutches of Cavers now, who doesn't really want him to be there, because that's a distraction when he's trying to fend off Beeson.
Yeah, it's absolutely fine if the car in front is a little bit quicker than you to draw you along, but if he's holding you up and you've got your class rival right behind you, that's the worst situation.
Out of the chicane they come then. Jonathan Beeson, another graduate from the Sprint Challenge, the Cayman Series, as a few years ago Carl Cavers used to race in that as well. Over the line they come. So Aaron Mason, Volkswagen Racing Cup champion. We did see him briefly in touring cars for a time. for Sean Hollenby's Volkswagen team. He is the man under attack from Cavers, as further back the Jenkins-Hopkins fight continues. They, of course, were in Sprint Challenge last year. They both graduate now to Carrera Cup GB, and Will Jenkins, who for his debut year goes into Pro-Am, fending off Pro Seb Hopkins.
Yeah, this is 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10, all very closely together. In front of them there's a reasonable gap of 5 seconds up to George Gamble, because the field got split up. But this is a great battle between these.
Down towards the chicane comes Max Coates then, so he's in 6th place overall. George Gamble still nearly 3 seconds back, as up the inside of Jenkins goes Hopkins. So they have spent most of their careers racing against each other, whether it's been in Ginetta Juniors or Porsche Caymans, now Porsche 911 GT3 Cup cars. Over the line goes Hopkins ahead, and the first of the driving standards flags is a fluttering, and it is to Seb Hopkins, another one going the way of Jonathan Beeson. So that means enough transgressions have now been committed for the warning to come from race control.
And the next time it will be a 5-second penalty, and after that a 10-second penalty. So you have been warned.
And this is Angus Whiteside, who's dropped back slightly, has he not, from Andrew Rackstraw. 0.6 of a second now is the margin between the two of them as they come up through Coppice, with James Wallace falling further back now in that 3rd place. Oliver White 4th, close to Wallace, not close enough to attack, but doing what he needs to do, which is to maintain a class lead.
Yeah, he's only got to finish and latch onto the back, stay where he is. Got a lovely big gap for the class lead, so Ollie White's in a slightly fortunate position after that first corner incident, but he finds himself now well able to keep the lead of the class, but also keep the pressure on the pros in front of him, which is admirable.
Race leaders again to the top of the Craner curves. There is James Wallace. Is he in danger of losing that place? He's only 0.8 of a second up the road on Ollie White now. Oliver White, who is a very accomplished Formula Ford 1600 racer. This is James Wallace's view. This is coming through the old hairpin.
Yeah, on board with James Wallace, just pulling 4th and then 5th on the run up towards McLean's. Watch as he straightens the steering wheel here to break in a straight line to equalise the pressure on the 2 front wheels. Hook the inside curb a little to rotate the car. 3rd up to 4th, back down to 3rd momentarily. Then he'll clip that inside curb, try and get the power on. Short shift up to 4th, about now just on the exit curb. Then up to 5th, and then you've got to pick your braking point for the chicane. Quite difficult to spot. It's actually easier when there are tyres there because you have a visual aid, but the drivers definitely don't want it. But neatly through there. Quite fast, that chicane, 3rd gear. So you're carrying quite a lot of speed. That's the same gear you go through Redgate in. You're coming down to Redgate now and down to 3rd. So similar sort of speed as a corner like Redgate is the chicane. So it's a fast, open chicane.
Now we have 12 laps to go, or 16 minutes, depending on which is down first. And here you've got Cole Cavers still ahead of Jonathan Beeson in the AM battle, but Cavers, dare one suggest, might be being held up a little bit by Aaron Mason. He would like to get past, doesn't want a fight that's going to put him in jeopardy.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? He's in a difficult position. I talked about it just earlier, but yeah, he wants Aaron Mason to get his foot down and clear off a little bit and give him some breathing room.
They come through the old hairpin then on lap number 13. Here are the race leaders. Andrew Rackstraw looking good up front. Angus Whiteside is the wider of the two, coming onto Starkey Straight there in the purple car.
Wider or wilder?
Both. Yeah, both in a sense. Century Motorsports 1-2 at the moment as they come out of the chicane.
Yep, they're teammates, but I know that Angus has a fierce will to win, and he's got a sniff of it. He's flashing the lights. He's got every intent now of having a go for this, and he will have a go. If there's a slight gap, he'll go for it. He's adopted the Ayrton Senna principle. If you don't go for a gap, you're no longer a racing driver. So if he can get on the boot lid, expect fireworks.
We saw Andrew Rackstraw win at Thruxton last season, and here, coming out of the old hairpin, he is still a race leader at Donington by 0.4 of a second from a very hard charging Angus Whiteside. But he's not really close enough to make a move. It's all very well flashing the lights. That was more to try to distract Rackstraw and force a mistake, I feel. But it didn't work, and so Andrew Rackstraw still leads. They head uphill towards Coppice. And now another driving standards flag. It goes to Ollie Jackson, and it goes to the leader, Andrew Rackstraw. Remember, in race 1 he got a penalty. In race 2 he's on a warning. The leader has got to be careful.
Well, he's on the bubble now of getting a penalty, isn't he? And they'll be told on the race receivers. They know exactly what it is. They know where the penalty points are. The big ones are that chicane they've just gone through and the exit of the old hairpin. But that will definitely temper him. He's very, very quick, though, Andrew Rackstraw, down the Carrera curves. I've noticed that on several laps, although Angus Whiteside closes up on the second half of the lap.
As long as that speed isn't why he's running wide at the old hairpin.
Might well be.
All well and good, but it could be the cause, couldn't it? Over the line in Am go Carl Cavers and Jonathan Beeson, starting lap number 15 of 24 as they head down to Redgate. Actually, Aaron Mason has put his foot down. He was listening to you. He's got away a little, so Carl Cavers' life is slightly easier. He's got Jonathan Beeson behind him, not darting around in his mirrors. They did have a good scrap earlier on, but for now, Carl Cavers is looking for a second-class win of the day. William Paul, the other Am in the race, just a little bit further back.
Yeah, just 3 Ams in it, so they're all guaranteed a podium, at least if they finish. But I get the impression Jonathan Beeson's just coming back a little bit at Carl Cavers now. And here again, you see at the end of the lap, Angus Whiteside's right on the back of Andrew Rackstraw, but then loses out a bit on the Craners. Let's see what happens.
Just to let you know, Carl Cavers, the leading Am, has also now picked up a warning flag for track limits. So the outright leader and the Am leader under observation. There is that overall lead battle. The gap is down, as you see, from 4/10 to 3/10. Keep an eye on Rackstraw because, as Tim was saying, he's really quick through the Carrera curves. But does that mean that he runs wide here?
Well, he missed the apex a bit there, but they both look difficult to tell from that camera angle on the exit. But they certainly carry good speed. Oh, we've got time penalties coming now.
And it's Seb Hopkins, number 18. So Seb Hopkins will cop a 5-second penalty. That's for track limits. So after a bad start, he's got further woe. And Whiteside now is having a proper go, isn't he? Because he's back on the tail of Rackstraw and he's on the light. So the pressure is coming down to the chicane on this 16th lap out of 24. To the chicane they come. Rackstraw then into the chicane. Whiteside right under the rear wing this time as they go right, they go left, they get back onto the power up towards the timing line. Last time, 0.317 of a second split them. James Wallace is way out into the weeds in the background. This time the gap is a 10th and Whiteside is on the attack, tries the outside into Redgate. The purple car is that of Angus Whiteside and he's looking to get up the inside of Andrew Rackstraw, who closes the door.
Yeah, that was very close. He wasn't quite close enough on the apex to get the cut back. But the pressure is well and truly on now. And of course, this is when you're more likely to make a mistake and incur a track limits penalty when you're under pressure like this. But Angus Whiteside's really got his dander up to try and get that pole. We saw James Wallace running very wide coming out of the chicane as well on the last lap.
And that delayed him a little bit, although he has got away from Ollie White once more, as with lots of momentum carried out of McLean's. There's a thought of an attack at Coppice for Whiteside. He's got the pace, hasn't he? And he's right there on the tail now of the race leader, Andrew Rackstraw, who is going to have to go very defensive because we've got just under 8 laps to go. Down to the chicane they come again. Whiteside is good at this part of the circuit, but not this time able to make a move. But it might come at Redgate.
Yeah, it depends on the exit. They both seem to come out fairly equally at that point. If Andrew Rackstraw does go very defensive and they slow their lap time down, it'll give James Wallace a chance to get back on the tail of them.
Yeah, last time he did lap about 3/10, nearly 4/10 quicker. So he's edging back into the mix. Down through the Carrera curves they come. Andrew Rackstraw versus Angus Whiteside then for the win of round 2 of Carrera Cup GB. Rackstraw under observation for track limit offences. Ollie Jackson making a mistake here at McLean's. And Seb Hopkins goes through.
Yeah, just went in too deep, couldn't make the apex and left the door open.
Little puff of tyre smoke I thought I saw from Whiteside there. Small lock-up at McLean. Hasn't cost him too much time, but another lock-up there may well do.
Yeah, at least he had the presence to come off the brake and not lock up and go straight on. But yeah, he's now going to have a flat spot on that tyre. That'll be the unweighted tyre when you're turning and braking to the right, so it will keep locking up in the same place. That could be the little bit of a saviour that Andrew Rackstraw needs.
He'd made one error at McLean's, a bigger one at Coppice.
Yeah.
Right, so the gap is still only 0.3 of a second. Despite that, Whiteside is not dropping away. We're on to lap 19 out of 24. Really tense battle this. Andrew Rackstraw having to soak up the pressure. He has not got the pace to get away from his teammate, but as long as he can hang on in there and not keep breaking track limit regulations, he's going to be okay.
Yeah, maybe a little adjustment. You can adjust the bias of the brakes inside the car, and as the front tyres get a little bit worn, you get a little bit less grip. Maybe just a couple of clicks to the rear of the brake bias will take some of that extra pressure off the fronts and avoid lockups for the rest of the race.
Now there's a driving standards flag to the reigning champion, George Gamble, who is still mired in 5th place. He just can't get any closer to Ollie White as the leaders go through, with again Whiteside having to fight the car through Coppice. So Rackstraw gets away from him. Down to the chicane they come. This will be giving a little bit more optimism to Andrew Rackstraw. It just takes some of the pressure off as he comes towards the chicane now. Right, left, there's Whiteside in 2nd place. And James Wallace 3rd as the pit boards go out from the Century Motorsport team, Nathan Freak's team, which is busy running cars not just here but at Silverstone today in British GT. The AM battle, Carl Cavers and a curb-hopping Jonathan Beeson. They've caught back up to Aaron Mason.
Yeah, this isn't going to be done till it's done, is it? But it's been a nervy race for poor Carl Cavers, trying to fend off but not really attack the man in the other class in front of him, Aaron Mason. But at the moment the positions are status quo.
They go over the timing line, down to Redgate once again. That is Ollie White, the Pro-Am leader, and he's leading Pro-Am by quite a margin over Max Coates and then Josh Stanton. There are your two outright race leaders, still in the order. Andrew Rackstraw ahead of Angus Whiteside, who is getting perhaps frustrated now because he's not quite got close enough to have a proper attack. Jonathan Beeson has picked up a 5-second penalty now for track limits. That takes pressure off Carl Cavers. But don't forget, he was one of the early ones to be under observation at the same time that this man was coming out of the chicane, Andrew Rackstraw.
Yeah, very much. That really makes it easy for Carl Cavers now. Even if he gets overtaken, he's only got to stay within 5 seconds to claim the class victory.
Is James Wallace getting closer again? In 3rd place, only fractionally, only by hundredths of a second now.
Yeah, top 3 doing exactly the same lap time to the same 10th of a second.
Now this is James Wallace's view. He's thinking, go on, get yourselves together, delay each other, or better still, trip over each other, and then I can luck into a win. James has not yet won in Carrera Cup GB. This is his 2nd season, and he powers then up now towards Schwantz Curve. In the old days, there'd be Starkey's Bridge there, but that was taken down many years ago. Up towards McLean's he goes. Turn right, road climbing at this point, and it climbs again here on the run to Coppice.
Yeah, and you actually saw him make a little brake bias adjustment. You saw his right hand reach out to the dashboard where the knob is to adjust the centre of pressure on the pivoting brake pedal.
Past the old exhibition centre on the left goes James Wallace, then down to the chicane, into which turn Rackstraw and Whiteside. So Andrew Rackstraw still leads the way.
I told you this race needed a safety car.
And Angus Whiteside has certainly not given up, but the gap is half a second. What we don't know is whether or not Andrew Rackstraw is being impeccably behaved at every corner of every lap, or whether he might just get carried away, because really at the moment you think that it's going to be a track limit penalty that promotes or helps certainly Angus Whiteside. So Rackstraw having to be super clean.
Yeah, George Gamble has closed a little bit on Ollie White. In fact, George Gamble was quickest man on that last lap, 1 minute 6.2.
Coming then out of Redgate goes Carl Cavers. Aaron Mason still up the road ahead of him. This is the reigning champion. This is George Gamble, who has had a frustrating day. Don't want to say anonymous in some respects, because the pace, the results haven't been what the reigning champion wanted, no question about it. But at least he can go away with 2-point scores from the 2 races. But it's been a really frustrating weekend. Don't forget, qualifying didn't go according to plan. That's why he was quite a long way back on the grid for the first race this morning anyway. Yeah,
but you know what? If they found, looking at his pace in this race, it's been a match for the leaders. So if they found the problem with the car, at least he'll be confident going into Brands Hatch.
Angus Whiteside, a winner at Brands Hatch last year, goes then through Redgate. Here you've got Josh Stanton just ahead of Seb Hopkins. Remember, Hopkins in that white, orange, black car has got a 5-second penalty for track limit offences. He looks at the inside of Josh Stanton, former AM champion. Ollie Jackson behind them has dropped quite a long way back now, and he is 8th on corrected times. He goes back ahead of Hopkins because of the penalty, but actually can't afford to lose too much more time, otherwise they have to give the place back to Hopkins. Beeson on the inside of Cavers for the AM lead. No way through there.
No, Cavers has shown, Carl Cavers has shown he's going to turn into the corner. A couple of times when Jonathan Beeson's put the nose up the inside, once there at Redgate, and another time, oh, a bit wide there, Jonathan Beeson, another time down here at the old hairpin, and Carl just makes him wonder about it, and he turns in and claims the apex.
Yeah, Carl Cavers very good at slamming the door, isn't he? I'd hate to be an employee going for a pay rise. You know what the answer would be. Over the line come the race leaders then. It is onto the last lap. Andrew Rackstraw versus Angus Whiteside, who lines up to have a go on the inside. Big lock up on the inside, couldn't do it there. Andrew Rackstraw leads on to the last lap. Was that Angus Whiteside's last roll of the dice, or is there another corner beckoning for him?
Well, you never know, but at least he's having a good old go. I told you he'd have a lunge if he could. I thought that could possibly have ended up in contact, but he's having a fantastic spirited drive. Last lap, as I always say, when you're the leader, is the hardest one to win. Seb Hopkins now has passed Josh Stanton on the road.
Indeed, but as Tim suggests, he's got that penalty to add on at the end. So, Coppice beckons, and then the chicane for Andrew Rackstraw and Angus Whiteside. Been a great battle between these two, and fair play to Angus Whiteside, because he's chipped away and got right up with Rackstraw, who, assuming he doesn't do anything wrong on this last lap, should be good for a victory. But we've said before that Whiteside is good down Starkey Straight. He jinks to the inside line, but he's too far back to commit to a move. Rackstraw out of the chicane. Checkered flag is at the ready, and Andrew Rackstraw is going to win round 2 of Carrera Cup GB. The South African driver Andrew Rackstraw wins from Angus Whiteside, making it a 1-2 for Century Motorsports. Third is James Wallace from a Pro-Am winning Oliver White, and George Gamble is 5th. And then it's a very long wait before Max Coates heads for 6th place. Now, what about the AMs? Well, in a sense, the battle is done anyway, because Carl Cavers is fighting against a driver with a 5-second time penalty, so even were Jonathan Beeson to get through, it wouldn't affect the result. But Carl Cavers wants to win legitimately, if you like. He wants to win on merit, and he does so. Carl Cavers wins 2 out of 2 in AM here at Donington, and that's another Century Motorsport run car.
Great day for